It began as these stories always do, with a promise. Not her words, her silence, her presence. The idea you created in the absence of truth. You saw what you wanted to see, a future, a partner, a home. What she offered was suggestion. What you built was fantasy. You paid for dinner, she paid with smiles, and you drove across town. She responded with a kiss. You gave your time, your energy, your loyalty, and what did she give? She gave you hope. The most expensive currency in the world. You thought love was a transaction of equals. You believed that if you gave enough, she would give back. That if you worked hard, stayed patient, remained useful, she would see you. She saw you, yes. She saw a man willing to trade his soul for a seat at a table he built. And so she sat, she feasted, she basked in the warmth of your devotion, while you sat on the edge, cold, hungry, and wondering why it still wasn't enough. You gave her the life. She gave you the illusion. She got the peace. You got the tension. She got the house. You got the mortgage. She got the memories. You got the debt. The philosopher does not say this in bitterness. He says it because it is truth. And truth, though it does not flatter, frees. So now you sit in the quiet aftermath. You check the bank account. You reread the messages. You try to make sense of how it all went wrong. But it didn't go wrong. It went exactly as the will designed. She got the life. You got the bill. And now finally you get the clarity. You thought she loved the man, and she loved the momentum, the trips, the dinners, the upward curve of your ambition. She loved being around power, not because she respected what it took to build it, but because she assumed it would always be hers to enjoy. You weren't the destination. You were the vehicle. She told her friends, "We built this together, but you remember building alone. You remember the nights you worked while she slept, the stress you swallowed so she could smile, the sacrifices she never asked for, but always accepted. And when the weight broke you, she grew quiet, because the fantasy she loved was cracking. She didn't love you broken. She didn't love you tired. She didn't love you questioning. She loved the version of you that could fund the dream. And when you couldn't, she left you with the bill. Now you walk through the wreckage, still hearing her words. You changed, as if aging is a betrayal, as if struggle is a flaw, as if love was conditional on you staying convenient. You wanted loyalty. She wanted lifestyle. You offered your name. She calculated her exit. And now you sit here, ashamed of your belief, angry at your generosity, haunted by the fact that what you called us was, for her, always temporary. But this is not the end. This is the unveiling. Because now you know, love is not what they say, and loyalty is not always returned. You gave her the life. She got the freedom. You paid the bill. And now, finally, you see the cost. They told you that love was sacrificed, so you sacrificed. You gave time. You gave money. You gave chances. You compromised your needs. You edited your thoughts. You swallowed your instincts. And for a while, it worked. She smiled. She stayed. She praised your effort. But what you didn't understand then, you do now. She wasn't praising your love. She was praising your usefulness. And the moment that usefulness became inconvenient, the story changed. You became controlling. You became too much, and you became the problem, because in her world, love isn't endurance, it's performance. And once you stopped performing, the curtain closed. Now you ask yourself, how could I have been so blind? You weren't blind. You were hopeful. You believed in a version of love that valued devotion over convenience. But she lived in a world that never taught her to stay when things got hard, only to upgrade. So while you held the line, she looked for the exit. And when she found it, she didn't flinch. You gave her your heart. She gave you a receipt. You got the bill. She got the life. But now, finally, you get the truth. And that truth, however heavy, is yours to keep. You paid in ways no one saw. Not just with money, but with time, patience, and quiet compromises. You forgave her moods. You accepted her absences. You adjusted your plans. Again and again, you made space. And what did she do? She filled it until she outgrew it. She didn't build with you. She nested in what you built, then left when it no longer excited her. And now she's the heroine in a story you wrote. She tells her friends about how she needed to grow, how she found herself. But you remember, she didn't grow alone. She climbed the steps you laid. You were the scaffolding. Now that the house is finished, you're gone, and the story rewrites itself. She got the life. You got the lesson that good men are not always loved, that sacrifice is not always sacred, and that giving does not guarantee gratitude. And you sit now, not bitter but awake. Because if the bill taught you anything, it's that clarity is worth more than companionship. And now you know. Your love was real. Your effort was honest. She got the comfort, but you got the truth. And the truth, though it costs everything, is the only thing you'll never lose. She got the life. Vacations, laughter, curated photos with filtered sunsets, and you got the silence. The kind that rings louder after the door shuts. The kind that doesn't ask for your version of the story. Because no one wants to hear it. You were the provider, not the narrator. And so she speaks, and the world listens. She cries, and the world consoles. She posts, and the world applauds. But you vanish. You become the man they say must have done something wrong. Because no one believes the man who gave everything could still be left with nothing. But the philosopher does, because he knows the will needs balance. She got the freedom. You got the responsibility. She got the audience. You got the debt. And when you speak, they say, move on. As if grief obeys speed limits. As if rebuilding what was never honored is as simple as forgetting it ever mattered. But you remember. Not because you want to, but because you must. Because in that memory is not just pain. There's proof. Proof that you gave something real. And that is the beginning of recovery. Not forgetting, but owning what was true in a world full of actors. You were real. She was rehearsing. She got applause, and you got the bill. But now, finally, you get to write your own script, and this time it won't cost your soul. You didn't lose her. You lost the illusion that love was mutual. You lost the fantasy that care would be returned in kind, that loyalty would be met with loyalty, that effort guaranteed intimacy. She loved what you provided, not who you were. She loved the results of your labor, the comfort, the protection, the optics. But she never studied the man behind it. She didn't ask about the weight you carried. She asked what more you could hold. And when you dropped something, she judged the noise. You spent your youth trying to prove you were enough. Now you see, the test was rigged. No amount of love would have satisfied her hunger. Because what she wanted was not connection. It was escape. From boredom, from responsibility, from the quiet truth that she was not yet whole. You became her bridge. And when she crossed, she never looked back. You were not abandoned. You were used and left when the utility ran dry. She got the storybook. You got the sleepless nights. She got praised for leaving for herself. You got blamed for being too much. But now you stop apologizing, because your love was not a mistake. It was misplaced. And now that it's back in your hands, you won't spend it cheaply again. She called it growth. You called it betrayal, and she said she was finding herself, and you were standing right there. But this is how the will operates. It dresses self-interest in the language of evolution. It calls abandonment empowerment. It labels manipulation as maturity. And the world applauds her. Because the world is built to reward those who leave first, who take what they need and vanish before the debt is due. She got the compliments. You got the cold. She got the freedom. You got the therapy. She got a narrative. You got the silence. And yet, you stayed silent, not out of weakness, out of decency. You didn't want revenge. You wanted truth. You didn't need her punished. You needed your pain to mean something, and it does. It means you were there fully. It means you gave what you said you would. It means you were real in a world that runs on pretend. You don't envy her new life, because you know what it cost, not just for you, but for her. She may look free, but those who avoid truth are never free for long. She got the life, but it came on credit. And you may be paying, but you're also learning. And when the bill is finally cleared, you'll be the only one who can say, I paid in full, with love, with loss, with my eyes open. There were moments, brief but brutal, where you saw it clearly. The way she studied you, not with admiration, but calculation. She loved the result, not the process. She loved who you were to others, not who you were when the door closed. When you broke down, she withdrew, not because she was afraid, and because she was disinterested. And your vulnerability wasn't intimacy to her, it was inconvenience. Because your purpose in her life wasn't connection, it was function. You were a provider, a protector, a pedestal. She stood taller because you lowered yourself. And when she no longer needed the height, she stepped off and left you where she found you. Now you carry more than just heartbreak. You carry the realization that your love wasn't met, only used. But this is not bitterness, it's instruction. Because the philosopher knows pain is not punishment, it's precision. It cuts away what is false, what is performative, what is unsustainable. She got the life, but you got the knife, and with it you've carved out a truth that no betrayal can ever take again. Love is not what they say. It is not obligation, it is not illusion, it is not owed. It is a choice, yours now, and no one else's to exploit. You thought the debt was financial, but it wasn't. It was emotional, spiritual, existential. You spent years investing in a bond that never matured. You gave your best seasons to someone who counted your effort but never matched it. And still you stayed, because the illusion was powerful. The illusion that love means patience, that giving more would fix what was broken, that consistency would breed connection. But what you didn't see then, you see now. She wasn't waiting for you to prove yourself. She was waiting for a better option. And when it arrived, quieter, richer, or simply newer, she left like she was never there. You're told not to speak of it, that to say this is to sound resentful, to move on, to take the high road. But the philosopher takes the true road. And the truth is she got what she wanted, security without sacrifice, affection without effort, a future funded by your past. You made the down payment, she got the view. You built the table, she took the seat. And when the wine ran dry, she found a new party. But this time, the cost is hers. Because you are not returning. You've learned the most painful freedom of all. That loving someone does not obligate you to stay useful to them. She got the life. You got the invoice. But you're the one who now owns himself. You tried to fix it, not the relationship, the rhythm, the silence, the cold. You brought flowers. You changed your tone. You swallowed your pride. You read the books. You went to therapy. She went to brunch. You gave more, she gave less. And the more you poured in, the emptier it became. Because her presence was no longer participation. It was performance. You were not building together. You were covering for her absence. She was already leaving, not physically, but spiritually. She was disengaging from responsibility while still enjoying the benefits. And you were still hoping. Because hope is the last illusion to die. Now, with distance, you see it clearly. She never loved the man. She loved the momentum, the lifestyle, the image of us that looked good in photos and passed the time. But when the time came to pay, not just bills, but truth, honesty, endurance, she disappeared into a crowd of applause. A crowd that never saw you. They called her brave. They called her radiant. They said she found herself. And you stood outside that circle wondering when reality became performance art. You are not bitter. You are no longer playing the fool. She got the life. You got the loneliness. She got the restart. And you got the residue. But now, at last, you are no longer cleaning up her mess, and you are walking forward, unburdened, unedited, and unwilling to pay for another dream that isn't yours. She got the life. You got the lesson. And the man who learns never pays the same price twice. They never warned you that some people don't build. They extract. She never wanted a kingdom. She wanted a castle, already built, already stocked, with a man at the gate who knew not to ask questions. You gave her that, a life ready to inhabit. And she did. She decorated it with plans and posts, told stories of struggle she never endured, shared victories that weren't hers to claim. And when she was done, when the furniture of your spirit no longer felt novel, she left. She left not in rage, not in betrayal, but in boredom. Because that's what happens when someone only sees your value in terms of what you provide. You gave her a future. She gave you an invoice. Now you sit alone, not wondering why she left, but why you stayed so long. The answer hurts. Because you stayed for love, for loyalty, for the belief that effort mattered more than outcome. But now, you no longer cling to effort as virtue. You understand what Schopenhauer knew. The will uses beauty, romance, affection, all as bait to keep men moving, providing, building what others will enjoy. And you're done moving. Not because you're tired, but because you're finished funding fantasies. She got the narrative, you got the silence. But silence is honest. And in that silence, you hear your own voice again, not begging, not performing, not hoping. Just knowing that next time you'll walk before you're asked to run. That next time, you'll keep the receipt. That next time, she won't get the life unless she earns the labor. And this time, you've learned. And that is something no illusion can ever take again. She moved on easily. You moved through fire. Because for her, the end was planned long before she spoke it. She detached in increments. While you were building a future, she was rehearsing her exit. And when she left, she called it growth. You called it what it was, departure. But you didn't fight. Not because you didn't care, because you were done negotiating with ghosts. You had nothing left to prove. You gave her your best years. She gave you closure in silence. And yet, you carry no hatred. Only knowledge. The kind of knowledge that doesn't show up in movies or therapy. The kind that bleeds in slow moments, that whispers during long drives, that reshapes the way you see everything. Because now you don't just question her, you question the system. The myths that taught you to give without question, to protect without boundaries, to provide without pause. And now in the ruins you build not a wall but a wiser man, one who no longer fears solitude, one who no longer believes promises not backed by presence, one who does not confuse availability with intimacy or charm with character. She got the life, but you got the blueprint for a new one that cannot be bought, borrowed, or betrayed, one that doesn't require approval to exist, one that no one else will write. You paid the bill. But the cost bought you something rare, vision, and that vision will never go bankrupt again. There is a particular cruelty in being replaced, not because you wanted to be worshipped, but because you were real. You showed up, you stayed, you gave her the best parts of you, and now she stands beside someone new wearing the smile you paid for. She gets to rewrite the story. You get to live in the reality she walked away from. And still, you don't correct her. Not because she's right, because you're done wasting your breath on someone who traded your truth for her comfort. She doesn't want the truth. She wants a narrative that flatters her reflection. She wants to be the survivor, the phoenix, the woman who escaped. You remember her soft moments, her contradictions, the things she once feared. Now she is fearless because she found someone else to carry her weight. And you? You carry something else now. You carry understanding. Not the romantic kind, the philosophical kind. The kind that watches love evolve into currency. The kind that understands people don't always want connection. They want a lifestyle. You were the investment. She was the withdrawal. And now the account is empty. But so is the illusion. And that emptiness, that's where the real life begins. No more pretending, no more rescuing, no more splitting the check for a dinner you didn't even get to taste. She got the life. You got the wisdom. And that wisdom will not bend for beauty again. You were never asking for worship. You were asking for recognition. A moment where she would look at you and see, not the provider, not the shield, not the solution, but the man. The one who stayed up when she slept, who planned when she drifted, who held space when she gave silence. But that moment never came, because recognition requires reflection, and reflection requires humility. She had affection, but not humility. She had gratitude, but only when it served her image. You were not her partner, you were her foundation. And the thing about foundations is, they're never thanked until they crack. Now, years later, she posts mantras about strength, about healing, about rising. But you remember the moments she could have leaned in and chose instead to scroll away. You remember offering your truth and watching her blink it away like an inconvenience. And still, you don't hate her, because hate is for equals. And this was never a match. It was a transaction disguised as romance. You paid with devotion. She withdrew attention. You paid with presence. She repackaged the history. She got the narrative, and you got the bill, but now finally you get the last word by choosing not to need one. You walk, not wounded but awake. She got the life. You got the ground beneath your feet, and nothing will move you again without your permission. Now something strange happens. You no longer crave the apology. You no longer rehearse what you'd say if she showed up again. You no longer fantasize about being understood, because you've finally done the one thing she never could. You've forgiven yourself. Forgiven yourself for not seeing it sooner. Forgiven yourself for giving too much. Forgiven yourself for building something beautiful with someone who only planned to rent. She got the credit, you got the collapse. But collapse reveals the foundation, and yours, despite everything, still stands. You are not broken. You are rebuilt, without the need to be needed. You walk into your space now and don't look for her things. You hear a love song and don't flinch. You sit in silence and it no longer accuses you. It welcomes you. Because this time the silence is not emptiness, it is honesty. She got the crowd, you got the quiet, she got the shortcut. You got the truth, and the truth is harder but cleaner. The truth doesn't demand an audience, it just demands that you stay. And for the first time in a long time, you do. You no longer measure time by what was lost. You measure it by what no longer controls you. Every morning is no longer shadowed by memory. Every night is no longer weighed down by questions. You used to wonder where she went, what she was thinking, whether it could have ended differently. Now you wonder something else. Why you thought you needed her to become yourself. The philosopher knows. The will gives beauty, attachment, desire, not as reward, but as trap. And you stepped into the trap with both eyes open, thinking it was a door to forever. Now the door is shut, and what you thought was a prison you see now was a lesson. She got the love story. You got the unsent letters. She got the spark, and you got the ash. But even ash tells you something burned. And from that burn you emerge, not clean, not untouched, but unmistakably real. You know what not to chase. You know who not to build with. You know the weight of carrying someone else's dream, and the cost of leaving your own behind. No more. Now what you build is yours. And the life you live, paid in full with scars that speak louder than vows ever could. You no longer flinch when people say her name. Not because you've forgotten them, because you've restructured the meaning. Her name is no longer a wound, it's a reminder that you loved honestly, that you gave completely, that you stayed longer than most men would have. And when you left, it wasn't in anger. It was in truth. The truth that you don't owe anyone your silence. That dignity isn't passivity, it's presence. And your presence now is sovereign. She got the lifestyle. But you got the liberation. She got a new story, but you got the original one, the one only you lived. And now you write again, not to rewrite the past, to reclaim the author, the one who no longer pays with his peace, the one who no longer buys love at the cost of his voice, the one who now knows. Not every loss is failure. Some losses are freedom finally named. Some exits are entries to the version of yourself you were never allowed to be. She got the life. You got the bill. But the man who paid it is no longer for sale. This is the paradox, and you gave everything and you are still whole. Because what she took was never essential. She took comfort, ease, illusion. You kept presence, depth, integrity. And those things cannot be stolen. They can only be remembered when the noise fades and the truth is the only thing left echoing in the room. You used to ask why it ended. Now you ask why you ignored the signs. And the answer isn't weakness, it's hope. But hope without discernment becomes self-abandonment. You will never abandon yourself again. You know now that love without reciprocity is not love. It's labor. And you've retired from that kind of work. Now you invest where effort returns. Now you stay only where presence is matched. Now you give only what can be given without betraying your soul. This is the man who rose from the wreckage, not with revenge, with vision. And the next time someone asks for your love, they'll meet the version of you who knows the price and will never pay for someone else's comfort again. She took the future you built and filled it with someone else's name. But you don't rage, because rage still clings. Rage still begs for acknowledgement. You've moved beyond rage. You've entered the space where truth sits quietly beside you like an old friend. You realize now that the man you were back then wasn't stupid, he was sincere. And sincerity, though painful, is never wrong. You didn't fail. You revealed. You didn't lose. You cleared the space for something truer to arrive. She got the life. You got the silence. But in that silence, you met yourself again. Not the boy who begged to be chosen. Not the man who proved himself through pain. The one beneath all that noise. The one who no longer performs. He lives simply. He speaks less. He listens more. Because he no longer needs to convince anyone of his value, he paid the price. And in that payment, he earned something she'll never touch. A soul that no longer rents itself out for affection. A life that no longer runs on approval. A man who finally belongs to himself. They'll never see what it cost you. Not the dinners, not the trips, not the years. The parts of you she took were never material. She took time you won't get back. She took dreams you adjusted for her. She took moments you should have spent on yourself. And when she left, she did not return them. Because they were never hers to carry. You carry them, and yet you walk forward, not hunched, not bitter, but grounded. You've become a man with gravity, not heavy with sadness, but with substance. Because the cost of illusion is the birth of truth, and your truth now is quiet, clear, and costly. You don't invest quickly anymore. You don't believe every smile. You don't confuse desire with devotion. You sit longer with your own voice before allowing another into the room. This isn't fear, this is discernment. Because you've paid once. And no matter how sweet the offer, you never pay twice for the same fantasy. She got the life. You got the truth. And the truth is the only home that doesn't collapse. This is what no one tells you. You don't heal by moving on. You heal by staying still long enough to feel what you were avoiding. You don't rebuild by finding someone new. You rebuild by becoming someone who no longer abandons himself. She left, but she left you with something she never meant to give. An invitation to remember your own value. Not the value she praised when it suited her. The value that existed before she arrived and will remain long after she's forgotten your name. Now you live differently. You no longer explain your peace. You no longer discount your presence. You no longer hand your energy to anyone who doesn't know what it costs. This is not the man she left. This is the man she never had the patience to wait for, the man who no longer romanticizes effort without return, the man who no longer invests where silence follows sincerity, the man who finally understands that giving is not the proof of love, receiving is. And if she could not receive you fully, she was never yours. She got the life, you got the silence. But in that silence, a soul returned home. And this time it's staying. There's a quiet you grow into. Not the silence of loneliness. The silence of no longer auditioning for love. You used to try so hard. Smiling wider, bending further, editing your instincts just to keep the peace. But peace kept breaking. Because peace built on denial is not peace, it's delay, and now you refuse delay. You say what you mean. You leave when you must. You stay only where truth is mutual. She called that distance, coldness, withdrawal. But you know now, it was healing. The world asked you to give endlessly. She asked you to hold her storms and praise the lightning. Now you hold only what's yours. Now you live lighter. And lighter doesn't mean lonelier. It means free. She got the world. You got the weight. She got the ease. You got the emptiness. But that emptiness wasn't punishment. It was space. Space for truth to grow. Space for self to return. Space for love that doesn't arrive as a transaction, but as presence. You won't forget her, but you won't relive her. You've paid enough, and from this day on, you spend only what's sacred. You used to beg for clarity, and now you embody it. Before you needed closure, answers, the clean bow tied around the ending, but you know now, most endings don't come wrapped. They just arrive. One day she was yours. The next, she was a memory, and no speech, no letter, no last look changed that. So you stopped asking. You stopped rereading the past for lines that would redeem the present. You stopped pretending that love once given must return. Because some people don't give, they receive. And when they've received enough, they call it closure. But closure isn't what they give you, it's what you find in their absence. And now, in her absence, you've found yourself. Not the self you were when she loved you. the one that rose after she left, the one who doesn't need the apology to forgive, the one who doesn't need revenge to release, the one who no longer grieves what wasn't real, only what was hoped, and even hope once healed becomes history. Now she's part of your story, but you are no longer part of hers. And that is the final piece, to no longer want a seat at a table where your worth was always under review. You no longer check her profile, not because you're above it, but because you're beyond it. There was a time when you watched, when you compared, when you wondered how she could seem so light while you carried the weight. But now you know better. You know that appearances are cheap, that the curated version of her life is not proof of peace. And more importantly, you no longer need her life to be hard in order for yours to feel honest. You no longer need her regret to validate your suffering, because your healing was never hers to deliver, it was yours to claim. And claim it you did, not in grand gestures but in quiet choices, in saying no without guilt, in sleeping without shame, in remembering who you were before you tied your self-worth to someone else's attention. Now when you look in the mirror, you don't ask who she saw. You ask who stayed through the heartbreak, who stayed through the silence, who stayed when even you wanted to leave yourself. That man is here. He's not perfect, but he's present. And presence is the only foundation worth rebuilding on. She got the life, but you got the man you were always becoming. And that man finally is enough. You don't wear bitterness, you wear boundaries. And they fit better than love ever did. She taught you how to give. But absence taught you how to keep your time, your peace, your voice, how to protect your mornings from ghosts, how to leave a room when your presence is only expected, not appreciated. This is not isolation, this is restoration, because now you know, not everyone who enters your life deserves a seat. Not everyone who says love means loyalty. And not every chapter deserves a reread. You've lived enough to know the difference between sacrifice and self-erasure, and you erase nothing now. You remember it all, not to relive it, but to learn. And the lesson? That healing doesn't mean you wish her well. It means you stop needing to know. It means her name no longer pauses your breath. It means the life she took is no longer the life you want. You're writing a new one. And this one, this life, is paid in truth, built in silence, and protected by the man who finally knows his worth. You used to fear being alone. Now you fear giving yourself to the wrong hands again. She taught you more than heartbreak. She taught you about thresholds, where to draw the line, when to stop pouring into a cup that only drains, how to recognize when your generosity becomes your jail. And now, you are no longer a reservoir for someone else's comfort. You are no longer a mirror for someone else's identity. You are no longer auditioning to be kept. She may call you distant now. She may say you've changed. And she would be right. Because the man who emerged from that fire no longer smiles to smooth the moment. He no longer waits for closure that won't come. He no longer explains to people who were never listening. She got the version of you that was still learning. Now the man remains who refuses to relearn pain for someone else's convenience. He is quieter now, not because he is empty, but because he is full, with the kind of truth that does not shout, but settles. And what has settled cannot be shaken. She got the life, you got the depth. And depth, once earned, never drowns again. You've grown tired of explaining why you left, tired of justifying your distance, tired of softening the story to protect someone who never protected your peace. So you stop. You let the silence speak. Because silence is no longer something to fear, it's something to honor, and you don't need to clear your name in a story she already rewrote. You don't need to balance the record in a room that applauded her exit. You need only to walk your truth. And the truth is simple. You stayed too long in a place that didn't value your staying. You gave too much in the hope it would inspire reciprocity. You believed that if you were just patient enough, kind enough, useful enough, she would love you back with the same weight. But she loved differently. She loved in chapters. You loved like a root. And when the winds changed, she called it time to move on. You called it betrayal. But now you call it what it is, clarity. You gave her the best parts of your youth, but she gave you the map out of illusion. And no map is drawn without loss. She got the life. You got the lesson. And the man with the lesson never walks the same path twice. You used to think healing meant forgetting. Now you know. Healing means remembering differently. It means looking at the same memory and no longer bleeding. It means holding the ache without becoming it. And that's what you do now. You hold it. The late nights, the long talks, the belief that this time it would last. You hold it all, not to grieve it again, but to honor the man who tried, because that man deserved more than her goodbye. He deserved more than her storyline. He deserved someone who understood that love is not given to the one who excites you. It's kept for the one who stays. But she didn't stay. And now you don't stay either. You walk when respect leaves. You step back when silence becomes manipulation. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't reopen doors that were slammed for effect. You live forward now, not in revenge, in reverence for yourself. She got the peace you paid for. But you get the clarity she'll never have. Because clarity is not comfort, it is responsibility. And the man who sees is forever changed.